Redshift here, doing my part to shift perceptions out of the pink and into the red. Okay, I wanted to mention in this video, which isn't really a red pill video or anything, but I wanted to mention how similar the Dark Josie character is to the Dark Willow character. The Dark Josie character is in Legacies, right? Like she's this witch and then she becomes evil. And it's really shocking how much that is just a straight up ripoff of Joss Whedon's Dark Willow character from Buffy in season 6 of Buffy. I mean, it's just absolutely shameless. Usually Julie Plec, she actually copies Joss Whedon a lot, but usually she puts a twist on it, right? Like how the Mora Mysterium, which holds the dark magic in season 2 of Legacies, is actually kind of similar to the Orlon window, which holds the evil memories, the bad memories of Connor in season 5 of Angel. So there's like things like that. Like she steals the idea, but then she changes it significantly. So I don't really blame her for it because it's not totally unoriginal. She took the idea and put a massive twist on it. You know, so I really don't mind that. But the way she ripped off the Dark Willow is just absolutely shameless. She didn't even change anything really. Like, number one, you got the black eyes. Okay, that's exactly the same. You got the dark veins around the face. That's exactly the same. You got the black hair. That's exactly the same. You got the fact that, you know, Willow was this, like, nice, good, mousy, gentle type of character. And then she becomes this, like, confident, evil character at the end of season 6. Very much like, you know, Josie being the, like, the quiet, gentle, mousy, you know, type of character. And then she becomes, like, you know, more confident and whatnot when she becomes evil. Just so similar. And then also the fact that, like, you know, they both had a relationship before that failed. Like, you know, Willow was with Oz and then he left and broke her heart. And then, Josie was with, this girl and then the girl left at the end of season 1 of Legacies and broke her heart. And so that was the same. And then you also got the fact that both characters changed, gender, like, sexual orientation, right? Like, Josie is gay. She's a lesbian in the first season of Legacies, and then she becomes straight in the second season, or at least bisexual. And then you got Willow first. You know, Joss Whedon did it first. Willow was straight for the first 3 seasons of Buffy, and then she becomes gay in season 4, and then is gay from then on. You know, she's a lesbian from then on. So, like, you know, there's just so many things that she ripped off when it comes to, you know, the Dark Josie character being a ripoff of the Dark Willow character. It's just it's really kind of astonishing how much she ripped off that idea. I mean, just absolutely shameless. What else? I couldn't mention the other things. Joss Whedon probably won't sue her, but she ripped him off so bad that I think he could probably sue her and win in a lawsuit if he wanted to sue her, but he probably won't because he's ripped off other people and he actually got sued once over it. So I doubt he'll sue her over this, but you know, he probably could win if he chose to. And it makes me curious whether they're gonna even rip off the way she is saved at the end of the season, because obviously they're not gonna let her stay evil the whole entire season. Just like Willow wasn't evil, she got redeemed at the end. She got saved, stopped being evil at the very end in the season finale of season 6 of Buffy. So I'm wondering if they're going to even rip off the way they saved Josie as well. And Dark Willow kind of like lost emotional control at the end and then tries to destroy the world before her friend softens her heart and then thereby gets her to give up her efforts to destroy the world. And I'm wondering if they're going to do the exact same thing with Dark Josie. Dark Josie's going to go over the edge, try to destroy the world, and then they're going to have to, you know, save her by appealing to her heart. You know, it's really, really astonishing how much they ripped off Dark Willow. Oh yeah, they're also both witches. That's another thing. You know, what else? Yada, yada, yada. Oh yeah, they both rebounded, right? Like, Josie was in that relationship with that girl in season 1 of Legacies, and then she rebounds and dates someone of another gender. That is, she was dating Landon until Landon gets his memory back, and then goes back to dating Hope. But in Buffy did it. I mean, Joss Whedon did it first in Buffy, where Willow was, you know, in love with Xander, but she never really dates him. And then, but then she does start dating Oz, and then Oz leaves her because he starts to turn into a werewolf when it's not even the full moon, and then he's afraid he'll hurt her, you know, so he leaves to learn control over, you know, his werewolf side. And then so she's like heartbroken for a while, like maybe 6 months to a year, whatever, half a season or maybe more. And then she meets Tara in the 4th season of Buffy, and then they fall in love, and then they're a couple, and they're together for like 3 years. So really, the only difference there is that Josie and Landon didn't stay together, whereas Willow and Tara did stay together. Although, if you want to look at it that way, Willow and Tara did actually break up for a while. Although then they got back together again. So I think that was like pretty much most of the things that were the same about that particular aspect of it. But there were a few other things like that Julie Plec was ripped off from Joss Whedon, like although she did change these somewhat. She ripped off the whole season arc of season 8 of Buffy. That was basically ripped off for season 5 of the Vampire Diaries. I think it was season 5. Let's see, the heart, how like the guy in episode 12 of season 2 of Legacies looks down, he's like, is that my heart? Because like his heart got ripped out and then he regrew a new one because he can't die in that prison world. And then he's like, weird. He's like, is that my heart? Weird. So like that was very similar to the demon in the basement of season 5 of Angel in the Holding Dimension who likes cutting Lindsay's heart out. He's always cutting Lindsay's heart out every day and then just throws the heart on the floor and the hearts just build up and build up. So that was pretty much a ripoff of that idea as well. What else was there? You really should watch all the seasons of Buffy and then read season 8 as well. I've not read season 9 or 10, but I know the comic went on for season 9 and 10 as well. But you really should watch all the seasons of Buffy and read the comic as well, because Joss Whedon is just like the most talented person in all of Hollywood. There's really no debate about that. He's incredibly talented. And if you like, fantasy shows, like you watch Legacies or something, oh my god, that show is infinitely crappier than Buffy. Infinitely. Even The Magicians is not as good as Buffy, even though The Magicians is a pretty good show. It's pretty interesting how like people, copy ideas from other fantasy shows. Like the episode The Wish in season 3 of Buffy, that episode is actually quite similar to, or rather the Legacies episode is similar to The Wish. Season 1, episode 10 of Legacies, the one about, Lizzie making the wish that Hope had, never come to the Salvatore school. Then she makes the wish that school had never existed. Then she makes the wish that Hope had never been born. That was very much like the Wish episode of season 3 of Buffy. But you could say the Wish is kind of like a ripoff of It's a Wonderful Life, right? Like, and then there's always like an episode in these kind of fantasy shows where there's like a parasite that like gets in people's ears and controls their brains. There's an episode like that in Legacies. There's an episode I think like that in Buffy. There was an episode like that in Star Trek. Like it seems like all these kind of shows have an episode like that. And like that one guy who wrote that one episode of Rick and Morty was like, he had Rick say something like, I'm sorry, I'm busy pretending that like fantasy is hard to do, right? Like totally like insulting the fantasy genre as if it like takes no brains to write fantasy whatsoever. But that's really ridiculous because the fantasy genre is such that like, yeah, maybe you can write a book or even do a TV show of fantasy that's popular, but that doesn't mean you can do it easily. But that's very different than doing a fantasy book or show that's actually really good. And that's just a totally different thing. Yeah, there's a lot of fantasy out there. Anybody can do it. You can even probably be an idiot and write a fantasy book and have it sell well. But that's totally different than writing a fantasy book that's actually really good and is going to stand the test of time or win awards. Because, yeah, there's a lot of fantasy out there, but most of it's crap. But, then again, that's true of most genres, right? So there's really very little fantasy that's actually incredible. Joss Whedon, Julie Plec. There's even only a few fantasy writers that are actually really good. Like C.S. Friedman, and not even everything she does, just mainly the Coldfire trilogy. And then you got Ursula K. Le Guin, her Earthsea series, and not even all those were great. Just like the first and the third book were great, in my opinion. I didn't like the second, fourth, fifth books, and then the sixth was a compilation book, short stories. But yeah, there's really not that much great fantasy. Even Tolkien sucks, man. The only reason Tolkien's famous and popular and everybody reads him is because he came first. So he's just famous because he came first. That's all. And the ideas in the stories were good, but like there's a lot of crap, super boring, like jolly old England crap in those books. So like, oh my god, they're almost unreadable. Those The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings books. Seriously, I've tried to read the trilogy twice, no, 2 or 3 times, and I still can't get through the second book. I mean, those books just suck. So like most fantasy sucks. So to act like anybody can write fantasy is not true, because if anybody could write fantasy, there'd be tons of Joss Whedon and Julie Plec out there writing amazing fantasy, but there aren't. There's hardly any of them, which proves that it's not so easy to write good fantasy. You know, and fantasy that stands the test of time, that's even a higher standard, right? Like the Coldfire trilogy, I would say has stood the test of time. I would definitely say the Earthsea books have stood the test of time. Those are pretty legendary. They've been around for probably 40, maybe 50 years. They've been around for a long time. Buffy was incredibly influential and still holds up today, even though it should be in syndication, but it's not. It's a Wonderful Life, you could call that fantasy in a sense. It stood the test of time. The Wizard of Oz stood the test of time. Breakfast at Tiffany's, Holiday Inn, not fantasy, but they've stood the test of time. Only things which stand the test of time are really true works of art. So I think it's totally inaccurate to say that the fantasy genre is an easy genre to do. It's just not true, not accurate. And it's also interesting to me that Julie Plec's career has also seemed to follow Joss Whedon's career trajectory. That is, he wrote Buffy. He created Buffy. It was and it did 7 seasons, and about like season 4, the end of season 3, he spun it off into Angel, and Angel did 5 seasons. Similarly, Julie Plec did the Vampire Diaries for 8 seasons, and around season 5, she spun it off into the originals, which also did 5 seasons, just like Angel. You see, the big difference here, though, is that the originals started out good. The first 3 seasons were good, especially seasons 2 and 3, in my opinion. And then the 4th and 5th seasons kind of sucked. Whereas Angel started out shitty. The first 3 seasons were shitty, from what I can tell. I've never even watched them. And then seasons 4 and 5 were good, especially 5. 4 was good, and 5 was incredible. So that was a difference. And also the fact that Julie Plec spun off the original. She spun off her spin-off, whereas Joss Whedon did not spin off Angel. So, although he did continue with Buffy in comic book form. Let's see here, yada, 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 yada. Oh yeah, also, another similarity, I guess this is inevitable, but Buffy and the Vampire Diaries both suffered in later seasons. The quality suffered because of the showrunner splitting their time between the original show and the spin-off. So the Vampire Diaries declined starting at about, I think, season 6, and because she started working on the originals, and Buffy declined in quality starting at season 6 because Joss Whedon co-created Angel and I think somewhat working on that as well. And I think actually I read in Frey in the foreword that he was actually at one point working on 4 shows at once. So at some point he also was doing Firefly at the same time as well, and maybe another season as well, which he might have been producer on or something. I'm not sure. Can't remember. I don't even know what show that was, but I guess there was a fourth show he was working on also. So, yeah. And then he was also doing Frey and Buffy Season 8 as well. Probably at the same time he was doing Angel still. So, I mean, God, the guy's a massive workaholic. But it's kind of funny that he blames, it was just too exhausted. He was too exhausted. He had to stop doing Buffy because it was too exhausting to keep doing the show and doing more than one show at a time. And I'm thinking, yeah, maybe you're so fucking exhausted because you're cheating on your wife the whole time. Maybe you'd have had a hell of a lot more energy if you weren't banging all the women on the set or the actresses or whatever. You know what I mean? That's probably why he was so tired. He's having to juggle, all the lies between, work and the women he's having affairs with there, and then, lying and keeping his wife from finding out, and running the shows and all that, dealing with the producers and the executive producers and the money people and all that. Imagine how stressful that would be. But if he hadn't been cheating on his wife, it probably would have been a hell of a lot easier. But yeah, he also, another difference in his career from hers is that he went on to do the Avengers movies, Avengers and Avengers Age of Ultron, and now also then later Justice League he wrote, but he didn't direct it. And then Julie Plec, on the other hand, has not done any comics and has not done any movies other than a TV movie about the CDC and some infectious disease. I don't know. I didn't watch it. Not my cup of tea. But she also did another spinoff of the original. So she's kept doing TV while he went on to do comics and movies. But I still found that similarity in their early career trajectory to be quite interesting. That they both did fantasy shows for basically the same amount of time, did the spin-off at the same amount of seasons into the first season, and then did a second show that did the same amount of seasons, 5 seasons. I'm actually kind of surprised, though, that she has not tried her hand at writing and directing films, because she's actually really talented, Julie Plec is. I would think that she could make a lot more money doing movies. She has a really good eye, she's a great director, and she has a great, way with words. She's a great writer as well, and she has great ideas for stories and seasons of shows. right? She's very, very talented. I think that she could probably, I would think that she would be able to do a Marvel movie, like even if only a minor one. You know, all it takes is one success, and then they'll want you doing even more movies, and then you'll get paid better too. And maybe they'll even offer you points, and then if the movie's a huge hit, like most Marvel movies are, she'd make a ton of money. So I don't see why she doesn't try to, you know, do movies. I really don't get why she would want to do legacies instead of doing movies, especially considering, like, legacies is so, it seems like she's half-assing it. Like, she's not even trying. Like the show, admittedly, the second season is way better than the first, but the first was so terrible, and there's even quite a bit of terribleness in the second season, even though it's way, way, way better and occasionally brilliant. It's just, you can tell they know they're making the show for these young idiots, like, you know, 14-year-old girls or something. I don't know. So, like, in some ways it's brilliant, in other ways it's just mortifyingly terrible. You know, so even the second season. So it's just like, why would she want to do that? Why would she want to half-ass a TV show that she's obviously sick of? She's sick of doing the vampire, werewolf, witch thing, right? Clearly. So then why would she keep doing that instead of doing movies where she could probably make a ton more money and, you know, up her career trajectory and, like, you know, up her status in Hollywood and all the rest of it, right? I bet you anything, if she got to do a Spider-Man movie, if Julie Plec wrote and directed a Spider-Man movie, it could be awesome. And she's really good at writing all kinds of scenes, but especially heartfelt scenes. And, you know, Peter Parker's that kind of character. So I bet you anything that a Spider-Man movie written and directed by Julie Plec would be both visually impressive, because she is one of those directors in Hollywood who, there's very few directors who have actually a really good eye. Not just getting good scenes and good performances from the actors, but also moving the camera in a three-dimensional way. Not saying she's anywhere near as good as, like, you know, David Fincher or Joss Whedon, but she's actually pretty good. She has a unique eye. I remember seeing an episode of Riverdale that she directed, and just in the first scene or two, I could tell by the way the person was moving the camera, before they showed the credits and I knew it was her, I was like, who is this director? They move the camera really well. And then it started showing the credits a little after that, and then it said directed by Julie Plec, and I'm like, oh, there you go. That's why I like the directing of this episode, because she's directing, and she's a great director. She has a great eye. So then, you know, like, considering you got to have a really good eye to direct something like Spider-Man, you got to have a three-dimensional eye, you know, three-dimensional mind. And she could, I think she would be able to do it. And she also is a great writer, so a Spider-Man movie written and directed by Julie Plec would be kick-ass. So I really don't get why she doesn't try to do that. I don't know. Maybe Hollywood's like, no, they don't think she'd be suitable. Maybe they're just idiots, and she's tried to do that, and they're not up for it. That could be it, too. I don't know, you know. Not because she's a woman, but just because they're idiots, and they can't recognize talent. I mean, Joss Whedon was like the most underrated guy in Hollywood for decades. You know, it took them decades and decades to realize how talented he was and let him start making huge movies. You know what I mean? So I guess that was about all I had to say on this topic. This has been Redshift. Hopefully someone found this interesting. Peace.